So I was asked to explain how a lawsuit was formed against some of the people who were exposing a ISKCON guru. ISKCON is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And some of the people exposing one of those gurus named Lokanath Swami from India has been getting all kinds of legal problems. However, we have to look at the original formation of this lawsuit. How did all of this start in the first place? And unfortunately, I'm involved in the sense that I write a newsletter for dissenters from the Hare Krishna religion. And we have opposed what we call the false gurus of ISKCON after 1978. And those gurus have had all kinds of scandals and problems, which would be too detailed to explain herein, but I do talk about them in my other videos. Suffice it to say, there's been banning, beating, mass child molesting, and lawsuits and murders, and many other similar types of problems, and so on and so forth. So anyway, I'm writing this newsletter, and I'm exposing all kinds of problems that are going on with these quote-unquote gurus who are supposed to be residents of God's planet. They're supposed to be successors to God, etc. And I get a letter from a lady who claims she was a victim of this guru, Lokanath Swami, when she was only 11 years old. She was a child at the time. So she explained to me that Lokanath Swami had touched her inappropriately over an extended period of days, and she reported that to her parents. Her parents wanted to call the police. First of all, they called the ISKCON leaders. The leaders came over and promised the parents that they would take internal censuring of Lokanath Swami, and he would no longer hold a position of authority in the ISKCON society, and there's no need to call the police. Now, this incident dates back quite a long time. The original incident took place in 1990 when Lokanath was staying with a family in New Jersey, and he molested their youngest child, who was a young girl. The young girl reported the abuse to her mother. Her mother contacted the ISKCON leaders, and also in 1990 the ISKCON leaders made a GBC resolution that all cases of child abuse must be reported to the local government authorities for investigation or prosecution. So this looks like something they were issuing as a response to the complaint from this family. We have the situation under control. We will report all abuse to the authorities. There's nothing further that anyone needs to do here. In 1993, the GBC was further informed of this case by a relative of the victim. And as a side note here, the relative of the victim had a pregnant wife, and she was almost ready to give birth to her baby. And because these people were starting to complain about the abuse of their relative, they were kicked out of the ISKCON apartment they were staying in, and as a result, the baby was terminated. So many of us believe the baby died because of all the stress and anxiety that the mother was being put through by the ISKCON authorities at the time. I think she was 8.5 months pregnant, so it's not a good time to put a person like that into distress. In 1993, the governing body appointed a 7-person subcommittee to investigate Lokanath's abuse, and that means a wide number of ISKCON leaders were aware of the complaint of the abuse. Then in 1994, Rabinder Swarup, William Deadweiler, he pushed the victim for assurances that she would not report the abuse to law enforcement. So obviously they were trying to contain the situation and keep it out of the hands of the legal authorities. In 1996, Lokanath had been suspended from being a guru temporarily, evidently. This was not going to be a permanent suspension because in 1996 his initiating resumed after his 2.5-year suspension. And he initiated another 5,000 disciples, or by now maybe more than that. So he just went back to resuming his post as the successor to God, as a person who is equal to Jesus in purity, as a person who can absorb sins like Jesus, and all the rest of it. So he just went back to his position, which they had promised the victim he would not hold this position. Meanwhile, I was helping put together a $400 million lawsuit against the entire ISKCON society for mass child abuse. And this was filed in the Dallas courts, and the lawyer's name is Wendell Turley. Anybody can look this up. And if you Google Hare Krishna child molesting lawsuit, $400 million lawsuit, you'll find this was all over the media. So it was very well known that there was a mass child abuse problem going on, not just in small incidences here and there with Lokanath. There was a massive problem with abuse going on, and at the time various victims were taking their lives because of all this stress and distress and the society ignoring the problem. But anyway, that case was won by the victims. The ISKCON leaders pleaded no contest. So it was evident that there was a widespread child abuse problem going on, and Lokanath was just a part of that problem, part of the process. But he was also a leader who was supporting the whole regime, which was a child molesting regime, because this was going on systematically, repeatedly. Various ISKCON leaders have said the abuse was industrial scale, very widespread. And so anyway, me and another person named Silochan were trying to put a lid on the abuse way back in '86, and my friend was assassinated. And that's the reason he was assassinated. He was exposing the child molesting. I would have been assassinated, except the federal authorities arrested the hitman who came out to get me from West Virginia compound of Lokanath Swami. So anyway, they have suppressed complaints of child abuse, and they have protected abusers, and Lokanath is just one of them. So Lokanath did admit that he sexually abused her in 2011 after I published the victim's complaint in 2010 on my newsletter. So we publicized the content of the victim's abuse because she couldn't get that published or rectified with ISKCON. So she sought outside help, which was me. So that's how I became involved in this whole thing. I published her letter, and then that started, many other people getting interested and involved in her case. Why was her case suppressed? Why is Lokanath still worshipped as good as God, as God's successor in ISKCON now? So, unfortunately, the people beginning to ask these questions were suppressed, and like I said, I would have been suppressed if it wasn't for the help of the federal authorities. I wouldn't be on the planet right now. They suppressed a death assault on my associate, and the FBI authorities at the time said, "You are next. They are coming after you." They means who? They means the Lokanath regime, the program which Lokanath is a leader of. So in 2011, Lokanath wrote a letter admitting that he had sexually abused the victim. This was an open admission letter, which I also published on my newsletter to show that there's some contrition going on here. But unfortunately, this wasn't really advertised widely in ISKCON. And in 2012, the GBC secretly placed restrictions on Lokanath without really publicizing that. So a lot of his followers in India were not aware that any of this was going on. And then in 2017, the GBC fully lifts all restrictions off of Lokanath and makes him once again the supreme messiah of the planet. As a liberating person, if you worship him, you'll be going back to God. They just started all that all over again. And in 1998, the governing body leaders said they were going to devote $1 million to a child protection fund, which was, of course, because we had sued them for $400 million. So they were going to now all of a sudden take a big interest in protecting children. They were going to donate a big fund for that. But in the year 2001, the people in Mayapur, India, where they had a big school for the children, asked for donations for shoes for the children. So there's going to be a big fund to help the children, but all of a sudden there's no money for shoes for the children. And this was one of the problems they had already. They had not been taking care of the children. The children reported not having soap and food, and some of them said they were eating rotten oatmeal, while the leaders were eating 25-course feasts every day, this type of thing. So the money evidently was being siphoned away from the children and onto the extravagant living of these leaders. Simultaneously, in 1997, the governing body leaders filed a lawsuit against the leaders of a free food for children program in India. It's actually one of the biggest free food programs in the world, Akshaya Patra. And they said they wanted to put the leaders of this free food program in jail. So, okay, that's going to starve a whole bunch of children. If you put the leaders of a free food program in jail, the children will suffer. So notice what happens. They're being sued for $400 million for starving their own children. And so all of a sudden they find $20 million to sue the people who are running a free food program. So, now, some of the followers of one of the big gurus named Jayapataka wrote a letter to me complaining that I have cost ISKCON $100 million by helping the child molesting lawsuit, the book changes lawsuit, and helping the free food people who were also being sued, and other lawsuits. So they have $100 million to spend on lawyers. But the children were not getting food. So what's going on here? And Lokanath is a leader in that program. Now, what's even worse is after we filed the lawsuit in America, the abuse in India got way worse, according to many reports. And to make a long story short, the Child Protection Office that was founded by the ISKCON leaders was all of a sudden defunded from $150,000 to $10,000 in 2021. So the whole emphasis on protecting children went basically out the window. Now, around April 2021, these documents about Lokanath abusing a child, being suspended, and his letter of admission and other associated documents were published for the first time on Facebook. And a forum was started where many people began discussing the whole issue of child abuse in the ISKCON society. And various victims were coming forward and it became like a clearinghouse for the abused victims of ISKCON. And various solutions were being presented. How can we fix this problem going on all around the ISKCON society, where children don't seem to be protected very well? So now this is the forum that Lokanath's lawyers right now are going after on Facebook. That's why they're suing not only the people running that forum, but also the Facebook company itself is being sued. Lokanath wants all that removed from Facebook. He doesn't want any discussion of the whole child abuse problem to be going on public forums. So they're trying to shut down basically the freedom of speech of all these people on the forum, and all of that is just to cover up the whole Lokanath thing, which they already agreed he needed to be suspended. They already agreed he shouldn't hold the public office. That's what they promised to the parents of the victim. But instead of fixing all these issues, they're just doubling down and trying to, suppress people. Never mind banning, beating, molesting, suing, and killing people. Suppression has been going on the whole time. So this is just another layer upon layer upon layer of their attempts at suppression. Anyway, in May 2021, the GBC once again suspended Lokanath, saying they're going to have an investigation of Lokanath. Then, 5 days later, they secretly changed their mind with no explanation. And then, in July 2021, they said the Child Protection Office, which they had supposedly appointed, would not be allowed to look into the Lokanath case, so they cut down their own, let's say, internal subcommittee from looking into the issue. And this is an ongoing thing. They still are not allowing open discussion. They're not allowing the Child Protection Office to look into this issue. So, anyway, the upshot is they're trying to now sue the people who started this forum, and not only that, also sue Facebook and shut down any discussion of this issue. But the first problem is that the whole Lokanath thing has been publicly discussed for years and years and years now. Putting the genie back into the bottle is just not going to work. But anyway, Lokanath is supported by a group of people from Baroda. One of them is Basu Ghosh, and this Basu Ghosh is one of the people who launched a lawsuit against the Free Food for Children directors, and he has been part of other lawsuits, and so on and so forth. So we think they're just lawyering up now and just trying to suppress everything as much as they can. The genie is out of the bottle, unfortunately for them, but Basu Ghosh is part of a group called the ICC, the India Continental Committee, which is part of ISKCON leadership there. And some of them have wrote to me saying that the reason I don't understand all this stuff is that I am a low-born malecha. Malecha means a Western person who eats meat. So I'm a low-born malecha, that's why I don't understand all this stuff. I don't understand why they are burying a known homosexual pedophile who is having oral sex with boys in his motorhome, and he was trying to get us dissenters exterminated. I don't know why that person has been buried in a big samadhi in the Holy Land, where he's being worshipped by children. So, children are going to the samadhi of a known homosexual pedophile who orchestrates criminal activity. His name was Kirtananda. His samadhi is in the Holy Land. The ICC people, the GBC ISKCON committee people say, I don't understand why all this is going on because I'm a low-born person. I'm a low-born person, so I don't understand why homosexuals and pedophiles should be worshipped as good as God. Wait a minute. So anyway, they're just, like I say, they're just doubling down, tripling down. Yeah, we have homosexuals, we have pedophiles in our chain of gurus from God. We have drug-taking people, we have drunk people, we have all sorts of, criminal behavior going on amongst our quote-unquote chain of gurus from God. But so what? If you question that, we're going to hire a bunch of lawyers and have you taken out. And, we've also taken people out in other ways, let's just say. So to me, it just looks like it is a criminal child molesting code. There's child molesting going on. They have to be sued. They have to be exposed. And the people doing that are finding themselves in the sharp teeth of their counter, let's say, aggression against anyone exposing them. So anyway, we just wanted to say we think this is just another attempt to suppress the freedom of speech of the dissenting group, and we don't think it's a good idea to have this allowed, and we hope it won't be allowed, and we hope people will listen to this and help our case and tell people in the courts of India they should not be defending these people, and they should not be allowing homosexuals, pedophiles, people who are having oral sex with boys should not be worshipped in samadhis in the Holy Land. And did I forget to mention that when Lokanath was appointed as a guru, he was appointed by the same people who had just reinstated another homosexual who was having oral sex with taxi drivers. So this person is having oral sex with taxi drivers, and the GBC knew that. They suspended him, and then they reinstated him. And then he had the title of Vishnu Pad. Vishnu is the name of God. Pad means his feet are equal in purity to God. And so they knew this guy was having sex with taxi drivers. They reinstated him. And then they voted in people like Lokanath as gurus, subsequently. So they have a sex with taxi drivers guru program, and they're voting in Lokanath as one of the co-gurus of that operation. I mean, seriously, that is what they're doing. And one of their authorities, his name is Lokanath Swami, J. Israel, he says that in ISKCON, their gurus may be found engaged in illicit sex with men, women, and possibly children as well. Well, not possibly, actually. Your gurus are actually having illicit sex with men, women, and children. Now, first of all, I got kicked out of ISKCON when I protested that Jaitirtha, who was one of their gurus, was having sex with a follower, and he was offering LSD to his deity of Krishna. And I said, we can't have illicit sex and drugs being worshipped as good as God. This is not authorized by the Krishna religion. And I got kicked out. That's what happened. And when I got kicked out, Jaitirtha said, watch your back. We'll come after you. So it's a very vicious cult. And they do come after people. And this has to be stopped. But first of all, we need to educate people. And the best way to educate people is with information. And so now they are once again trying to suppress the information that we and our partners and associates and friends have been putting out. And we hope this will not come to pass, that they're going to win on this issue, and that they will once again suppress complaints about their homosexual, pedophile, drunk, debauchee, deviant, porno swami watching gurus, and this will not be allowed to continue. So anyway, I hope this helps. I have made a series of videos also on YouTube here, which you can watch, which are related to all these issues, where I discuss some of the different personalities involved, some of the history involved. For example, I have the whole Jaitirtha story that I was involved with, and so on and so forth. So if you want further information, you can look at those videos, or you can contact me directly. And I hope this helps. Harry Bowen.